Now that I'm retired, I'll never own my own home again. Most people hear that I rent and they come to conclusions. They think you just can't own a house, but the opposite is true. In this video, I'm gonna break down the real numbers and show you why renting while retiring could be the smarter and more secure choice over owning. I'll show you my real numbers and the most important factors to consider and expose the real reason that renting was the best choice for me. And if you stick around to the end, I won't give you one, I'll give you 3 free tools, including the calculator I use to run my own numbers, completely free. I'm Emilio. I retired at 48, traveling the world and living my own freedom. I share the systems that work to keep me here. If that's the life you want, subscribe and turn on the bell. If you appreciate this type of content, gently tap that like button. Let's head over to my desk and I'll give you the whole story with the numbers to back it up. Here's what people think home ownership is in retirement. People picture it like the perfect little story with a mortgage paid off, laying down on a hammock, under a big tree. Everything's perfect forever. But most of the time, that's just not how it plays out. Even if your mortgage is paid, the house is still a living, breathing thing, an expense machine. There are property taxes, which infinitely go up. I've heard on the news lately, retirees being priced out of their homes because of rising personal property tax. Insurance, which can go up, way up, depending on the area. Like Florida, where I live, there are repairs that are not optional. The water heater doesn't care that you're retiring. The roof doesn't care. The air conditioning HVAC system waits until the hottest day of the year to just break down on you. Now, I just told you a story about my own life, and stories are easy to argue with. So let me show you how none of this is unique to me. Start with the one that sounds like complaining. Retirees getting priced out of houses they already own. Harvard has a research group called the Joint Center for Housing Studies. They study how Americans actually pay for housing, and they track this. In 2023, 34% of older households in the country were cost burdened. That means housing eats more than 30% of everything they bring in. 12.4 million households. That's the highest it's ever been. And here's a number inside that number. Between 2019 and 2023, the count of cost-burdened homeowners went up by 3.6 million. And nearly half of that increase, 1.7 million, that was 65 and over. Not renters, homeowners. People who did everything right, who owned the place, and who are getting squeezed inside it. Then property tax. There's a company called Adam. They collect property records from counties all over the country so they can see what tax bills actually do. Their number, the average bill on a single family home hit about $4,400, up 3% in a year, on top of 5.8% the year before. Small number attached to a bill that arrives every year, compounds, and doesn't stop when your paycheck does. Then insurance. This is where I have to tell you I live in the worst possible place for it. Florida homeowners pay somewhere between 2 and 3 times the national average. Insurify, a site that compares insurance quotes so they can see what people are really being charged, puts the Florida average around $8,300 against the national number closer to $3,000. Hold on to that, because when I show you my house in a few minutes, my insurance was about $8,000 a year. I wasn't the unlucky guy. I was the average guy. That was just the price of the room. And it moved. Florida home insurance jumped 18% in a single year. 18! That's not a line item creeping up. That's a number with no ceiling and no schedule. And nobody I called could tell me where it stopped. And repairs. This is where I have to be honest about my own numbers before you ever see them. Every credible source says roughly the same thing. That same Harvard group puts annual maintenance at 1 to 2% of what the house is worth. The wider rule of thumb is 1 to 4%. And past 30 years old, you budget towards the top. On a $700,000 house, 1% is $7,000 a year. 4% is $28,000 a year. I budgeted $2,400, a third of 1%. Nowhere near what the studies say. And that's the number I want you pushing on me when you see my list. Because I wasn't beating the average. I was hiding the cost somewhere it never shows up on a spreadsheet. And I'll show you exactly where. Yes, renting has its downsides as well. But keep an open mind for a moment. Renting is not just about the money. It's the mental load. It's the constant background stress that's going on. What's next? What's going to break? What's going to leak? What surprise bill is going to show up, right? I feel stable when I rent. My costs are more predictable. Not perfect, not immune to increases, but predictable in a way that my monthly life feels calmer. I know what my rent is. I know what my utilities are. If something breaks, I'm not panicking until the morning, thinking, do I cash out $5,000 of investments to pay for this repair? For me, I'm just calling maintenance. That's it right there. Predictability matters so much in retirement, especially if you're living on a fixed income, drawing on investments, or just trying to make your money last without feeling anxious all the time. This pool right here, I clean the last one myself every week. Skimmer, brush, chemicals. That's not a complaint. That's just a line item that never shows up on anybody's spreadsheet. Same with the lawn. I cut it, I edged it, I fertilized it. So when I tell you what owning cost me a month, that's the honest number. And it's still too low. That's the answer. The studies say 1 to 4%. I paid a third of 1%. And the difference didn't disappear. It got paid on Saturdays. And Saturdays don't show up on a mortgage statement. I owned houses for 20 years, 14 in one and almost 6 in the last. Add up your own Saturdays and you're not counting hours anymore. You're counting weekends spent maintaining an asset instead of using one. Now look around. Same pool, same water. I didn't clean it. I don't own it. I didn't buy myself a cheaper life. I bought myself a life where somebody else handles this. I love renting for the flexibility because retirement is not always this perfectly stable. Renting lets you pivot because we don't always want to lock ourselves into something huge. I don't want to be feeling trapped by a house. I don't want my whole life to revolve around a property. I want my home to support my life, not become my life. And renting gives you that freedom. You want to try a different neighborhood, you can. If you want to downsize again later, you can. If you want to travel more, which I do a lot, and you don't want your house sitting there begging for your attention, you can set up your life for that. And I know someone will say, but rent can go up. Yes, it can. And that's why you plan smart. You choose your building and your lease carefully. You watch the market and you keep a buffer. But really, home ownership can go up too. Taxes, insurance, HOA fees, maintenance, those don't stay still. They just show up in a different form, offered at the worst possible time and usually in bigger chunks. And that's right, rent does go up, about 3.5% a year this century, lately closer to 5.5%. Real money, and I'm not waving it away. But look at what the number is. It's a schedule. It arrives on a lease with a date on it from a landlord who has to compete with every other building on the street. Now put my insurance next to it. 18% in 1 year. No schedule, no lease, not negotiable. That's the difference. And the whole reason I'm standing here. I wasn't comparing two numbers. I was comparing in two directions. One of them I can plan around. The other one, I was just absorbing every year and hoping. Another huge reason that renting can be a smarter financial move is liquidity. When you own a home, a lot of your money is trapped inside the house. It's sitting right there as equity. It might grow over time, yes, but it's not paying your electric bill today, unless you sell or borrow against it. When you rent, you can keep more of your money working for you in investments or savings or a simple cash cushion. Liquidity is what gives you options. Home equity can be a great thing, but it can also create a weird illusion of security. Like you're wealthy on paper, but you're stressed every month because you're cash tight. In retirement, I care more about cash flow than being able to say I own a property. Trapped inside the house? Let me show you exactly what that looked like in dollars on mine. And I need to define one word first because most people use it wrong. Equity is what your house is worth today minus what you still owe the bank. Not what you paid for it, not what your neighbor got. Worth today minus what's owed. Mine was worth about $700,000. I still owed about $250,000. So my equity was $450,000. If you own the house while you got the number like that in your head and it feels like money, it isn't. Not yet. Equity is the number before the subtraction, and the subtraction is rough. Here's mine, line by line. First, it costs money to sell. For decades, the standard was 6%, split between two real estate agents. On a $700,000 house, that's $42,000. Gone at closing, right before any money reaches you. I didn't pay 6%. I paid 2.5%. I sold it myself. I listed it, I showed it, I handled the paperwork. And the only commission that I paid went to the agent who brought the buyer. About $17,500 instead of $42,000. And this isn't a trick that worked for me. In 2024, the National Association of Realtors, that's the trade group that almost every real estate agent in the country belongs to, settled a lawsuit and dropped its rules on commissions. 6% stopped being the standard. It's openly negotiable now, in writing, on every deal. And Redfin, one of the big national brokerages, found buyer's agents averaging about 2.3% after the change. Almost exactly what I paid. I wasn't underpaying anybody. I was just paying the going rate for the one service I actually used. I kept about $24,500 that most people never find out it's even on the table. It's the easiest lever in this video, and almost nobody pulls it. Next line, the mortgage. $250,000 paid off at closing. That's not a loss. It was never my money, but it comes out. Then the one people forget, I had other debt. I cleared it with the proceeds, about $100,000. Gone the same week. No regrets, but notice, money you use to pay off your debt doesn't become freedom. It stops the bleeding, and it comes out before you get to count anything. So, $700,000 minus 17.5 for the sale, minus $250,000 on the mortgage, minus $100,000 for the debt. What actually landed was about $330,000. $700,000 on the sign out front, $330,000 in my account. That's the gap that nobody mentions at a dinner party. And it's the first thing you have to be honest about. Now the second word, carrying costs. That's what the house charges you every year just to keep existing. Property tax, insurance, maintenance, HOA fees. HOA stands for Homeowners Association. And that's the monthly charge you pay in a lot of neighborhoods and pretty much every condo building. Carrying costs isn't a mortgage. The mortgage is its own thing. Mine, you've already seen all three of these. Property tax, about $8,000. Home insurance, about $8,000, the Florida average. Maintenance, $2,400. The one you already know is too low. HOA, $0. I bought specifically so I'd never have one. 8 plus 8 plus $2,400, that's $18,400 a year with no HOA at all before I made a single mortgage payment. And here's what matters more than anything else in this video. The mortgage ends. One day you make the last payment and it's over. And that's the picture almost everybody has in their head. Paid off and done, free. The carrying cost never ends. Not when the mortgage ends, not when you retire, not ever. If I had stayed in the house and paid it all completely, it would still have handed me a bill for $18,400 a year for the rest of my life. And that number doesn't hold still. You just watch what it does. So a paid off house isn't free. The house where you stopped paying one of the bills. Mine wasn't paid off, by the way. I still had a mortgage, about $2,000 a month in principal and interest. And that's the loan payment itself before any of the other bills. So all in, owning me cost me $3,500 a month or so. Now, the last word, and it's the one the whole channel runs on, years. Dollars are a useless unit. $330,000 means something completely different to somebody who spends $30,000 a year than to somebody who spends $150,000 a year. So convert it. Take what you'd actually walk away with and divide it by what you spend in a year. Not your salary, what leaves your account. For me, that's a little under 5 years of my life, fully funded. And I need you to hear what that actually is, because it's not a nicer retirement. It's a retirement that starts 5 years sooner. That's the real answer to what my house was worth. Not $700,000, not $450,000 of equity, a little under 5 years of not needing a job, which is why the title of this video says what it says. And this is where renting gets unfairly judged. People act like renting is throwing money away, but let's reframe that. Renting is not throwing money away. Renting is like paying for a service. You're paying for shelter, yes, but also maintenance, convenience, mobility, mental space. And mental space is not a small thing. It's actually a big luxury. When you own, you're the project manager of your property. There's always something, a yard, a driveway, a fence, a weird sound, a neighbor issue, storm, a tree limb. When you rent, your home becomes what it should be. A place to live, rest, and enjoy your life. If you love travel like I do, renting can be a better choice because of the emotional burden of leaving your house at weeks at a time are real. Even if you have cameras, even if you have neighbors, and even if you lock everything up, there's still that background anxiety. I hope nothing happens while I'm gone. With renting, especially in a well-maintained building, you can leave and actually enjoy yourself. You don't feel chained to the property. All right, I spent the whole video making one side of an argument, and I won't let you decide off of that. So let me make the other side as well as I can make that. Owning wins on real things. A mortgage has an end date, 30 years, and it stops for most. My rent has no end date and no maximum. And I'll be paying in some form or another for the rest of my life. That's a genuine structural advantage, and it isn't a small one. Owning is for savings. Most people are terrible at putting money away on purpose. A mortgage does this for you, whether you you're disciplined or not. And for millions of people, the house is the only reason they have wealth at all. You get the appreciation. If the house runs hard for the next 10 years, I get none of it. And people who told me I was throwing money away would have been right. I'll say so. And you get control. Knock out a wall, put it in a pool, paint every room a different color. I ask for permission or I move. And here's one specific thing to me, so you know that I'm not hiding it. Renting did not save me $1. Run my house against my rent, and renting comes out about $92 a month more expensive. More. I'll show you that screen in a minute. Printed by my own tool because I'd rather you see it from me than to find it in the comments. I don't get to stand here and tell you I found a cheaper way to live. So why did I do it? Because I stopped asking which one is better and I started asking a different question. Everything has its own job. What's this one's? My houses had a job for 20 years between them, and they did it. They kept me somewhere safe. They stored my money while I wasn't ready to use it. Yours might be doing a bigger job, raising kids in it, keeping families close. Only you can weigh that. But the day that I wanted the money instead of storage, the job was finished. And I was paying full price for the storage. So it isn't rent versus own. It's this. What's the house doing for me right now, this year? And is it worth what it's charging you? If it's a home you love, near people you love, at a price that doesn't squeeze you, keep it. You already have your answer. Mine was charging me $18,400 a year on a number with no ceiling and holding 5 years of my life somewhere I couldn't reach. And honestly, if owning and renting come out almost the same price, and on my house they did, I'll settle for the relaxing, peace of mind option every time. That's not finding a loophole. That's just a trade nobody tells you you're allowed to make. For most of us, we picture retiring earlier to enjoy and choosing less responsibility than before for bigger things. And I'm not up for that responsibility for a house anymore. I spent my whole career being responsible to corporations and businesses I worked for, to deadlines, to other people counting on me. Retirement for me is where I get to be lighter. Everything I just told you came out of a tool I built because I got tired of doing this on the back of an envelope. So let me stop talking and run it. My house, my numbers on screen, including the part where it tells me that renting costs more. All right, here it is. This is the rent versus own calculator, the thing I promised you at the start. It's a web page. You open it up, you type your numbers, and it does the math right in front of you. No spreadsheets, no formulas, nothing to install. And nothing you type gets saved or sent anywhere. It says so right on the page. About a dozen numbers, and most of them, you know, off the top of your head. I'm putting my actual house in on screen right now. Same numbers I've given you all video. First question, what's the house worth today? $700,000. Next, what do you still owe on it? $250,000. Now the yearly costs one at a time. Property tax per year, $8,000. Home insurance per year, $8,000. Maintenance, $2,400 a year, which is $200 a month. And remember, I did pay a lot less than the average because I did my own maintenance. HOA, condo fees per year, $0 for me. Mortgage payment per month, $2,000. And look what it says right here under the box. If your tax and insurance are escrowed into the payment, you leave them out here because they're already counted above. And most calculators let you count that money twice. This one warns you. I like that it warns you. And right next to cost to sell, that's the debt you pay off with your proceeds. So if you don't have any, you won't put in, but I had 100,000. Watch that one because most calculators skip it, and skipping it makes your numbers look way better than they really are. Now the other side, and this is where people cheat. Comparable rent per month. It has to be a real place like the one you're leaving and in an area you'd actually want to live. Not the cheapest thing you found online at midnight. So for me, $3,600 a month. Renter's insurance, about $300 a year. And that's the whole thing because I'm not insuring a building anymore. Then it asks how far to look. My age today and the age to run it to. So 51 and out to 81, so 30 years. And the last one, what you spend in a year, everything included. It'll even let you spend less as you get older. 3 bands are shown, all your numbers. I'm keeping mine simple, so 70,000 straight through. And you see it already, if you put in the same for all 3, you know, it just says same, so you don't have to actually input it 3 times. That's the number that turns dollars into years. So it has to be honest. A calculator you lie to is a calculator that lies back. It even asks you about traveling months at a time and living somewhere cheaper. Leave those alone. That part's yours for your own numbers. And there it is, years of freedom, 4.4 years. That's the headline. And it's the only number I really care about. Underneath it, what owning charges you every year, itemized. Property tax, home insurance, maintenance, HOA. That's the carrying cost every year. For me, it's $18,400. That's the one that doesn't stop when the mortgage does. And there's the honest part I promised you. Renting costs me more by $92 a month. More. It's right there on my screen, and I'm not hiding it. Then the crossover, when owning would finally pull ahead on cash. And on these numbers, it's age 81, year 30, and it draws it for you. That line is how far ahead selling stays, sliding down to 0 over 30 years. But this isn't my number yet. Look at the cost to sell, what it costs to sell, 6%, because that's what the page assumes unless you tell it otherwise. And that's not what I did. So watch this, because this is the part I want you to take with you. I'm changing exactly one number, 6% to 2.5%, which was what I got charged. Watch the number move, 4.4 years to 4.8. What I walk away with goes from $308,000 to $332,500, $24,500 for one decision about how I sold it. Almost half a year of my life on one line. And look at the crossover. A second ago, it said that owning catches up at 81. Now it says never. Owning never pulls ahead at all. And the dot on the chart, it's gone. One number. That's how thin the line is between owning eventually winning and owning never winning. And nobody tells you that number is a lever. So no, you don't need to own a home to retire. Knowing my expenses and now worrying about all the hidden expenses gave me the peace of mind I wanted when I retired. And here's what I promised you. Not one tool, 3. The rent versus own calculator I just ran, a COD skill that walks you through the same numbers one question at a time, and a 1-page worksheet if you'd rather write it out yourself. Put your numbers in and get your years back. Just head over to my free Freedom Operating System community on Skool. The links are in the pinned comment below, or you can go to skool.com/FOS. Go to the classroom section and click on Tools and Resources. Now click on Rent versus Own Calculator skill. All 3 resources are there for you, plus other resources I created. Then let me know in the comments if you're pro-own or pro-rent, and anything else on your mind on the subject. If you want more of this, subscribe and turn the notification bell on so the next one finds you. I'm Emilio, and as always, stay free.